Our good friend Michael Dragoo is in the kitchen with us today, and we'll be doing a plain dumpling. It's a fun, simple recipe, so join us as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.
So, this is such a simple recipe, and I bring simple recipes to the fore, but why are we picking something so simple?
So many times, we're doing a recipe that's like a main dish, right? So we did the fricassee here, or we do a stew or whatever. This is one of those things that goes along with that. Sort of like a dessert, right? Or
supporting
a side
role,
dish.
yeah.
A side dish. So I wanted a nice simple one. Something that you could whip right up alongside the other ones. So that's what we've got here. Very few ingredients.
Right.
This recipe comes out of the Modern Art of Cookery, improved by Anne Shackelford. It's from about 1767. So it's right in our 18th century time period, and we just hardly need any ingredients at all. So let's get started with this. I've got, and of course this one's funny because half the ingredients have measurements and half of them don't. You think, now, how do you do that, right?
Right.
Especially when the main ingredient is flour and she doesn't give us a measurement.
Right.
So I'm going to say a cup and a half of flour. We're going to go ahead and put some sugar in there. I would say a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons. That's a tiny bit, more than that.
There we go.
There we go. We've got that. We also are, let's, as a dry ingredient, let's put in some currants. You can use raisins, but these currants are nice and small, and they kind of fit with this. Let's just put there. Some currants in there. That looks good. We need a little nutmeg in here.
Of course we do.
I gotta have nutmeg in it, okay?
Did the recipe call for
the
nutmeg?
recipe called for nutmeg.
I'll give you a pass.
Although I think it says just a little, which is too bad because you can't go wrong with that.
Well,
there's some nutmeg.
I smell it already.
Yeah, and the other ingredient here is yeast. And yeast in the 18th century wasn't this powdered, dry yeast that we're used to in recipes today. It was barm. It was a liquid yeast.
And what is barm?
Well, it's the liquid yeast off the top of beer that's brewing, right? And if you aren't a typical brewer, you don't have access to liquid yeast, then you can take your modern yeast that you would get in a dry package and basically make up a barm mixture. So you put a little bit of water, a little warm water, a little bit of flour, put your yeast in there, and let it set for a couple hours.
Any sugar in that, or just the...
You can add a little sugar in that, but generally there's enough sugars in the flour for it to
And then what we're using is the foam or the whole...
We're using the whole thing.
Okay.
They would scrape off all that stuff off the top, and then they would sell it. The brewer would. So, and what we want to do is make a stiff paste with this. So we're just going to use this as our liquid pretty much. Okay. And start to mix that up.
So we're using our barm as the liquid. We're not adding anything else. No water, no milk, no nothing.
And we could. It's all about getting to that consistency. You know, she says, get it to a stiff paste. I knew that with the water that I added to the yeast, that we would get to the stiff paste that we want.
Well,
we can kind of see
there. Look at that.
Yeah,
that's cool. After we've got this kneaded, what are we doing next?
Well, you can take that bowl out of the way.
Sure.
And we're just going to make up little balls. Now, we could make this into a bigger dumpling. We could make it a giant dumpling. But we're just going to have these sort of, I don't know, biscuit-sized pieces here. You would probably call this, the size of a very large walnut, right?
How are we preparing these? Are they getting fried? Are they getting, what's happening?
We're just going to make sure these, as long as they're stiff paste like this, we can drop these right into boiling water. So that's all. It's very, very simple. Here you go.
Yep, thank you.
So we want them the size of an egg or so. Now the recipe says that we can either boil these in a cloth, but since these are small, we don't even need to do that.
Right. So they just need to cook all the way through.
Right. If we wanted to make a big one, we would do it in cloth. But since these are small size, we can just boil them just like that.
Very good.
So since these are yeasted, we probably want to leave these set for a little bit, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half hour in a warmish spot, not hot. Just a warmish spot so that they can just grow just a tiny bit. Although most of what is going to happen is while it's cooking, while it's boiling along. So we're going to set these aside and then we'll go to the fire.
Very good. Okay, here we go.
So our water is nice and boiling. We can just start to drop these in.
They don't need to be in a bag or anything.
No, just like that. We just drop them in, nice and gentle, without burning ourselves. And they sink to the bottom.
I see that.
At the beginning, and as they cook, they'll rise to the top.
Are they done when they rise to the top? Or are they done when they brown? What's happening?
They never brown because
Okay.
this is just boiling them.
Okay.
So we're gonna cook them until they rise to the top, and let them cook a little bit longer because we don't want these to be raw.
No.
Like most things you boil, you just sort of have to give them some time and let them cook up. They're not gonna turn a color like if you were frying
Got
them.
it.
But for this size dumpling, I boil them about 30 minutes. Our dumplings are out here, and they are ready to serve up. Here you go. You can pick one,
thank you.
Michael.
This
Now,
guy.
again, these are, these
get some
might
more
be a
sauce.
dessert thing. I've got some more sauce over here. They've just got a little bit of sauce on them right now.
Now what's the sauce?
The sauce is a typical pudding sauce. This is, it's equal parts sack and butter and sugar. So, I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
That's perfection.
And sack in this situation is a sherry. So it would have been the typical sherry of the time period.
Right.
Probably a little different than our sherry today, but our sherry's going to have to do, right?
Not planning on sharing. This tastes
That's right.
pretty good.
Now let's see how this goes. First, I got to get cut into this guy. Woo.
It's done all the way through. How long were those boiling? About 20, half an hour?
The fire went down a little bit,
Yeah.
so it cooked a little bit longer.
Those are good. That's excellent. Give me a straw and I'll finish that off.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
Yeah, it's simple. It's a great beginner recipe. It's one you can do with kids. It's one that if you haven't done anything 18th century before and you want to do something different, this isn't like modern cookery.
Nope.
Normally we don't do these strange kind of all by themselves boiled things. You can do this over the open fire. It has very few ingredients, so anybody can do this. It's a great place to start. Thank you so much, Michael,
Well,
for
sure.
coming in on this episode, and it's a fun one. And you
It
had to taste this one. I mean, you just never know what it's going to be like.
No, I like the simple ones because I'm not that
If
sure.
you're interested in another recipe that's very similar to this, another dumpling recipe, make sure to check out this video. Thanks for joining us today.